What's up everyone, and today I would like to start this video off with a pretty unpolarizing sentence. Curse of Osiris sucked. That sentence is almost entirely agreed upon by the player base of Destiny 2. Curse of Osiris offered a super low amount of content for $20, and the content that was there was considered mediocre to very low in terms of quality. And to make matters even worse, Curse of Osiris did nothing to fix any of the game's problems that it had at the time. Thankfully though, Bungie seemed to have learned from their mistakes, and the next few content releases all improved on the problems of this DLC. Sadly though, over the past 2 years, Bungie has found a way to give us content that is smaller than Curse of Osiris, worse than Curse of Osiris, and twice as expensive as Curse of Osiris. This content I speak of is the seasonal content we have been receiving for the past year and a half. But before I get too far into that, there's something I want to address. This video is not strictly a review of Season of the Chosen. It's a critique of the seasonal model as a whole, but because this is a video criticizing the seasonal model, I might as well give my thoughts on the brand new season. Basically, I think Season of the Chosen does two things very well. The new loot is a welcome addition to the game, especially considering we got more legendary weapons in this season than in all of Beyond Light. These new loot drops have better perk pools than Beyond Light weapons, and are actually in a variety of activities, unlike Beyond Light weapons. I will be sad to see some of these go in a year due to sunsetting, especially the new Gambit 120 RPM hand cannon. I also really enjoyed the seasonal storytelling and story that we've gotten so far, because from what we have seen, the season has both an interesting and nuanced story, which is something we've rarely if ever seen within Destiny. And it accompanies this story with actual in-game storytelling beyond having players read about it in the lore tab, which is a huge plus for the game as a whole. But those are the only two strictly positive things I can say regarding the season, because essentially all other aspects of the season are held back by the problems that are inherent with the seasonal model. This video will be exploring these problems, and I hope to explain how the seasonal model as a whole is very bad for the game. Seasonal content releases are a form of content for Destiny 2 that was introduced during Year 2 of Destiny 2. When seasons were first introduced to the game, they were described as extensions of the endgame experience. I believe this is a good goal for seasons to strive for, and for the first year, I would say they accomplished this goal. Black Armory, the very first season we ever received, introduced a new raid, included new, very powerful legendary weapons to pursue, added multiple exotic quests with amazing rewards, such as Izanagi's Burden and The Last Word. Then this was followed up by Season of the Drifter, which focused more on expanding the endgame experience of Gambit, along with the introduction of the 0-hour mission, which was a truly stellar piece of endgame content. This was then concluded with Season of Opulence, which introduced another raid, the amazing Menagerie activity, loads of new loot, and the Tribute Hall, which gave players a bunch of other objectives they could pursue. Altogether, I would say these seasons definitely expanded the endgame experience of Destiny, and while these seasons had problems, they overall left players hopeful for Destiny's future seasons. Sadly though, Bungie's newer seasons don't reach the same highs as those older seasons, and they also suffer much lower lows. Bungie's post-Shadowkeep seasonal releases are shallow, unfun, do little to improve the game, and are downright terrible when compared to even the worst Destiny 2 DLC, which was Curse of Osiris. But don't just take my word for it, let's look at some hard numbers and compare Curse of Osiris to the past 4 seasons of Destiny 2, specifically Seasons of Dawn through Hunt. On screen you can see a table I made comparing the content we received with these pieces of DLC. The darker red or green something is correlates to how much better or worse something is than its counterpart. Basically, if something is dark green or dark red, then it's drastically better or worse than the other piece of content it's being compared to. And if it's a fainter color, then the difference is not as severe. So with that out of the way, let's get into the comparison. So, right off the bat, I would like to point out that aside from the core activities, these two pieces of DLC offer somewhat similar levels of content. But that is not really a good thing. You see, Curse of Osiris should not be the benchmark that content is being compared to, and especially when Curse of Osiris offered more content in most categories. Remember, Curse of Osiris is probably the worst DLC Bungie has ever made for the franchise of Destiny, and to use that as the benchmark for their seasonal content is terrible. And it gets even worse when you factor in that arguably the most important category, being strikes and crucible maps, are just overwhelmingly in Curse of Osiris' favor, because those are the pieces of content that will end up being played the most. And the comparison gets even worse when you factor in the price. And the price is very important when comparing these two pieces of content, because without it, these two things look pretty comparable. That is until you see Bungie charges twice as much for this seasonal content as they did for Curse of Osiris. In fact, they are charging the same price as Forsaken, so let me throw that into the table. It really isn't even comparable to the complete ripoff that Bungie calls seasonal content, and the fact that Bungie charges this much for seasonal content either shows how good their marketing team is, how desperate players are for new content, or how gullible the Destiny community is. Personally, I think it's a little bit of each. And what makes this extremely sparse amount of content even worse is the drip-fed way that Bungie releases this content. Drip-feeding content does not improve content in any way, and honestly usually gives it a worse impression on the community. This is because drip-feeding content prevents players from playing at the pace they want. This causes seasons to typically release with very low amounts of content, and by the time all future content is finally released to the player base, the seasonal content has already been so overplayed that significantly fewer people are excited for the new content. Probably the most visible case of this occurred during Season of the Worthy. During Season of the Worthy, Bungie released a quest to unlock the Fell Winter's Lie shotgun. The quest had a step that required players to grind out a very large amount of the season's activity. The step tracked the community's progress as a whole, and the only problem was that by the time this quest was released, the season had already been out for a while, and most people were bored and burnt out of the activity. This was due to the over-reliance on one single activity and the lack of replayability that activity had to offer. This is a fairly common problem within seasonal content releases, and due to that problem, the Fellwinter's Lie quest did not become anywhere close to being completed until Bungie drastically lowered their requirements for the quest. The entire ordeal was very embarrassing for Bungie and really showed the flaws within seasonal releases. Similar problems occur in almost every season, and to mark my words, these will be the same problems Season of the Chosen faces in the coming weeks. Because while Season of the Chosen may have had enough content for a month or so of enjoyable, casual gameplay, Bungie will instead draw this content out over several months, which will in turn lead to the content becoming extremely overplayed and cause massive burnout among a large portion of the player base. To explain what I mean, let's look at the Battlegrounds activity for Season of the Chosen. The season launched with 2 Battlegrounds available to play, with 2 more being released in the coming weeks. The problem with this is that for the beginning of the season, when players are playing the new content the most, they are stuck grinding the same 2 Battlegrounds over and over again. This will lead to players becoming very bored and burnt out with the activity. This will in turn cause players to be less and less excited for the new Battlegrounds which will be releasing in the coming weeks. And when the new Battlegrounds are added, players will not be anywhere near as interested or excited as if the content was released with the season. This applies to nearly all seasonal content from every season. And another huge problem with seasonal content is the overwhelming lack of difficulty. Because seasonal activities are only designed to be played for a few months, Bungie ensures that they are mind-numbingly easy to make sure everyone can grind out seasonal gear before the end of the season. This makes seasonal content feel cheap and useless because ultimately it usually is. Seasonal content isn't designed to evolve or grow the game. It's usually just meant to keep players logging into Destiny week after week. And that, in my opinion, is the biggest problem with seasons. They aren't designed to give players the best experience, they are designed to be a cheap and easy way to retain a player base. Because while most games design hard challenges to overcome, engaging gameplay loops, and high replayability, and they just overall design content meant to improve their game, Bungie releases half-baked expansions and then trickles out content that should have launched at the start of the year over the next 11 months. So how should seasons be improved to fix the problems I pointed out in this video? Well, I believe that seasonal content in its current form should be shelved indefinitely, and this would allow Bungie to divert resources from seasonal releases back towards their fall expansions and would hopefully give us fall expansions with enough content to not have a repeat of Beyond Light launching with less content than Shadowkeep. So if Bungie did go this route, what should they do with post-expansion content? Well, I think they should do a few things. I believe the Season Pass, as in the Battle Pass aspect of seasons, should stay. It gives more casual players a defined way to earn materials they otherwise would not be able to get, and a very easy way of telling how long a season is. But I also believe that seasons should be used to introduce old Destiny 1 content reworked for Destiny 2, instead of developing shallow, useless content. Destiny 1 has a large swath of content from Crucible maps to raids, all of which would be ideal to use for seasonal releases and updates in the future. But there's one more thing that Bungie should do, and that is they need to develop more events in the likes of Iron Banner and Trials of Osiris. These events that last for limited amounts of time and have their own loot pools would be a great way of retaining a player base for long periods of time. For example, Bungie could bring back faction rallies, Sparrow Racing League, and the Queen's Wrath event, all with some new loot, and Bungie could even bring back Trials of the Nine and make it an end-of-the-month PvP activity instead of the weekly one like Trials of Osiris. And Bungie could even make a new event or two in addition to all of this. And obviously some of these events would need some tweaks from their original forms to be reworked into meaningful parts of the game, but the end goal should be for Bungie to have a large pool of events that can be happening every week with their own exclusive loot pools, giving players a reason to log on week after week. Overall, all of these changes would greatly change the seasonal model, but I think they would also overall improve not only seasons, but the general community perception towards Destiny. But as it is right now, Bungie does not have an incentive to change up their seasonal model. This begs the question of how do we get Bungie to change up seasons? Well, the answer is pretty simple. We don't buy seasonal content anymore. We as a Destiny community should not buy seasonal content until either Bungie drastically increases the amount of content or quality of content we get with each season, or Bungie needs to cut the price of seasons in half, or just completely rework how seasons operate. That means don't buy Season of the Chosen, don't buy whatever Season 14 is, and don't buy any seasonal content until Bungie actually proves it's worth your money. And I don't want to see a single person in the comments saying something like, oh, Bungie doesn't have Activision anymore, so we can't expect actual value for our money then. Destiny 2 was one of the top 12 revenue earners on Steam in 2020. Destiny is packed to the brim with microtransactions. Bungie is a large-scale AAA developer team with their game on all major platforms. So to pretend that Bungie is the little guy that needs our help is one of the most ignorant and close-minded things someone can say. Bungie is a multi-million-dollar company with an entire marketing department to boost their reputation. They don't need some random dude in YouTube comments defending them as they rip off their consumer base. And if they don't have the resources to pump out seasonal content every few months, then that is okay. In that case, Bungie should just shift all of their resources away from seasonal content and dedicate it towards fall expansions. So again, we don't get another fall expansion as small as Beyond Light. I mean seriously, Season of the Chosen offers and adds more weapons than Beyond Light did. So once again, I will say that no one should purchase Season of the Chosen, or any season for that matter, until Bungie improves their content, because this is the only way for the community to have their voices heard. Bungie can say we're listening all they want, but they only actually hear us when we speak with our wallets. And if you think you'll be missing out on any content, trust me, you won't. All of the best changes that come with seasons are free to all players, and Season of the Chosen is no exception. Just look at the content for Season of the Chosen aside from the seasonal activity and related loot, everything is free. That includes the new Trials loot, new Core Activities loot, new Ritual weapon, the 2 returning strikes along with the 1 new strike, even the Season Pass exotic armor, linear fusion rifle, and sidearm can all be earned through the free tier of the Season Pass. In fact, all but 4 of the new weapons added this season appear to be free to all players. All people are losing out on by not purchasing the season is the ability to play the Battlegrounds activity, which is laughably easy, and the new Tex Mechanica exotic scout rifle coming later in the season. I mean, I only got to play the free rounds for the tutorial of the season, but if that's what every session of Battlegrounds is like, then I'm 100% positive players will be tired of it within a week. And those free rounds of Battlegrounds dropped me the SMG sniper and rocket launcher, so there's really only one weapon this season I'm missing out on. We need to demand Bungie actually earns our money and not just fork it over as soon as Bungie releases any content for their game that arguably should have launched with the fall expansion. And listen, I know that I have too small of an audience for my call to boycott to actually accomplish anything. So please share this video around, put it on Twitter, put it on Reddit, hit up other creators. Do anything to get the message out there and get people to actually make Bungie earn our money. And on the topic of sharing, I'm sharing a link to my Discord in the description. I'm trying to build up the server to a point where we can get community game nights and other stuff like that going. So if you want to get involved with that, and just more involved with the channel in general, please join the Discord linked below. And anyways, with all of that out of the way, I'm expecting this video to be pretty divisive, so please sound off your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you liked what you saw and want more like it, please like and subscribe so you don't miss my next video. And until next time, goodbye.